We're seeing so much division at the moment, Amrit. We're seeing so much fear. We're seeing so many people spending a lot of time trying to second guess what's happening with these global situations. What's your perspective on all this?
There's so much going on, as you're alluding to. We're not really choosing what we want. We're just choosing the best of what we've got. He's exactly the person that you want to spearhead and steer this. I'm not alone in asking the questions that I'm asking. Breakthroughs universally have come from the biggest breakdowns.
How much is about working on ourselves and how much is about the attention outside of us?
I think the rate at which things are accelerating is intense. The shift, I do believe, is happening. It is coming.
Instead of this black and white thinking, look at all the 50 shades of grey and sort of have these discussions. Well, what are we missing here?
The challenge, back to your initial question, is
So I'm absolutely delighted to welcome back a return guest to my podcast today, Amrit Sandhu. And what an amazing guest you are. You have got a fantastic YouTube channel yourself and podcast with some wonderful guests, Inspired Evolution. Obviously, as usual, the links below. But as well as being an international speaker and podcast host, you're also a fantastic coach to people. And in times like this, Amrit, we all need a little bit of guidance. You know, there's so much pulling people in lots of different directions. So I think this is going to be a great conversation today about how people can really keep in a curious state of mind without going into the fear state. Obviously, there's a lot happening politically at the moment across the pond in America, which affects all of us. But you know, keeping us out of the fear state and on purpose and not trying to control things that we can't really control. So first and foremost, a big welcome to the channel. How are things in your world?
oh my goodness, Catherine. Thank you so much. It is such a humbling treat to be back here. And yeah, just always such a pleasure, touch wood. And thank you for the glowing introduction. It is very humbling to receive that. And yeah, very honored to be here. How are things in my world? Things in my world are budding and growing. We were discussing a little bit earlier. Yeah, two little monkeys, munchkins, whatever you want to call them, two little rugrats running around the house, keeping me busy, which is really awesome, actually. And yeah, I think you alluded to it too. The time flies when you're kind of having fun. So touch wood. Yeah, it really is flying. But yeah, I'm well. Thank you for asking, and I'm really excited to dive into. Yeah, this is a really deep conversation that you're gearing us up for, and I'm excited to go on the journey of it.
Fantastic. So let's start with the current topic at the moment. The big American election, and I always put these things in inverted commas because there's so much what we don't know about, however much people think they know. We're seeing so much division at the moment, Amrit. We're seeing so much fear. We're seeing so many people spending a lot of time trying to second guess what's happening with these global situations. What's your perspective on all this and how people can really center themselves and understand where to put their energy at times of such, you know, when we're being led in so many different directions apart from inwards?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and I usually try my best to refrain from stepping into the political space, but it's hard when, well, not hard. It's interesting because a lot of my coaching clients are in fact in the US, and so I've just been noticing of the last, especially the last 4 to 6 weeks, it's they're all quite centered, quite grounded, quite spiritual, but even there's so much going on, as you're alluding to, that is even, that they can't help but be caught, swept up in the wave. So, on a couple of levels, I think the division and fear is an interesting piece. I think the time that we're in right now, it's really interesting watching people make the decisions that they're making. And I think it speaks a lot to the dissolution of our times, if that's the word to use, in that we're not really choosing what we want. We're just choosing the best of what we've got, if that makes any sense. So it's like I've got option A, I've got option B, But really what I'm looking for is option, like it's a number, let's say 7, but I've got to choose a letter. Like I've got to choose A or I've got to choose B to make a decision. And it's quite, I imagine, disheartening. And I can imagine why I live in Australia and we have to vote, right? But in the US, you don't have it's not necessary to vote. And so many people don't vote and opt out of the system. And it's such an interesting system whereby if you pop out, you're still sort of endorsing the system to make its own way and have its way with you, which is quite disempowering on itself. So I see the sort of desolate nature of all of that. And it's yeah, in an ideal world, if I could wave a magic wand, I think it comes back to the idea that it's challenging when we live in a world where in order to get elected into power, you've got to be someone that aspires to a position of power. I remember we had a local community gathering here in Melbourne, and there was a circle run community event that we were running, and they were electing people to sort of spearhead at president what we were trying to achieve. And I still remember to this day there was about 30 people in the room, and like a couple of people put their hands up, and to sort of steer the committee, steer the community. And a few people put their hand up for this other person and said, hey, we would really like this person to do it because he's been the most experienced in this matter, and we think he'd be lovely at it. The gentleman himself didn't really want to do it. And he found himself in this really interesting situation where he was like, look, I don't really want to do it, but there's 4 or 5 of you saying I should do it. If it's kind of what everybody wants, I mean, I probably could do it, but I don't really want to do it. And it was very interesting to watch him get elected, because he's exactly the person that you want to spearhead and steer this. Now, I know like pushing that out on a global scale is potentially unlikely, but also the more I continue down the research of my own podcast, and I do ask questions like, is this solipsism? But it does sort of seem as within, so without, as its presence for the individual, as is so, present for, the world at large. And so watching this sort of play out as a really inspiring sort of way that someone got elected, I was like, wow, that person didn't have any appetite for power. And yet they're in this position where they can steer others literally as a leader from a place of service. It was really inspiring to watch. So I do harbor a lot of hope. I do think there are templates and models and people waking up. And I think that's where it starts, right? In your local grassroots community. And then eventually that filters up to the top. Now, none of the change that we want to see is happening fast enough, touch wood. And that's just the entrepreneur's the entrepreneur's handbook in many ways. It's like that should have happened yesterday. But the shift I do believe is happening. It is coming. In terms of metaphysically, I'm definitely not an authority to speak on this, but you asked for my take on it. I think it's pretty interesting. My own reflections go along the lines of the embodiment of what the nation of the US nation sort of stands for, the United various states that make up America. And at the heart of it, I think most people will connect to, yes, the essence of freedom, but really the word is liberty.
Yeah.
And so when you've got liberty at the heart of really what's driving the essence of this country, from the metaphysical standpoint, I find it back to what we were saying. It's like you've got 2 choices, A and B, and yet you're looking for the number 7 as your outcome. And so when you come to liberty, even when you speak to people about, abundance in their life, they talk about money, but really they just want money so they can have a lot of choice, right? They really want choice because money gives them freedom of choice. And so liberty now reflects choice. And it's really interesting because you've got this land of liberty who metaphysically embodies liberty. Yeah. And yet your choices are corrupted. And you don't really have a choice. And so a whole foray of an exploration into free will, into destiny becomes available and to sort of contemplate. It's like, this is meant to be the land of the free. And are they even free to choose their path forward? What is the metaphysics of the energy / the force that is, taking a sweeping hold of all of this? It leaves a lot to be desired, but it opens up a lot of questions. To sort of bring this all into an array, I think the interesting part of all of that is it's really fantastic, touch wood, I believe, not to sort of say, hey, I get to explore this stuff, but I think I'm not alone in asking the questions that I'm asking. I think more and more people are having conversations like, what does this mean metaphysically? What does this mean for us at large? What does it mean for the collective? What does this mean for the neighboring country? What does it mean for the individual? Right? What does this say about me and my neuroses, right? My hang-ups, my strengths, my challenges, my values, right? So these questions are being had now on every level, and the conversation is starting to happen where people are really starting to question. So for me, it's almost like you've got, you know, this is probably a very crude metaphor, and pardon me for using this. It's just the one that comes to mind. But when you've got like a pimple on your hand or something, and it's like the pimple's emerged, the impurity under the skin was present a long time ago. It's now that it's sort of on its way out, and you can sort of see this bulbous sort of thing where it's like, hey, this is, oh, that's a bit, it's not attractive. I love you, but it's not attractive. And so in that space, it's now this opportunity to have a look at it and kind of go, what are we going to do with this? And it's like, do I pop it? Do I allow it to like sort of heal? Do I let it do its thing? We are going through, it seems at large, a massive shift and healing, because when you speak to the spiritual teachers of our time, they're all saying, yes, there is a massive shift coming. And as we all know individually, I guess I'll just speak from my own space. The biggest breakthroughs universally have come from the biggest breakdowns. I became a meditation teacher because I struggled with 6 years of depression, and it transformed my life, as we discussed last time round. And then one of my other biggest challenges was 7 years of career misalignment, and just how soul sucking that was, touch wood. I don't use that word lightly. I hate using it, but here we are. But then, like career alignment brought this whole, like life coaching and purpose and the importance of it into array. So I think at this particular juncture, it could go either way. If I speak like the engineer and the spiritual life coach, leadership coach, but I'd have to give into the opportunity that there is hope, and that there is a shift that's happening. We are just breaking down to breaking through. But there is a lot of writing on the wall at the moment that leaves a lot left to be desired. But I do think there is change underway. But the opportunity right now seems to be to question.
I love all of that. There's so much I want to unpack for that, because that was so beautifully said. And I think one of the questions that keeps coming up in my world with all the brilliant guests that I'm discussing things with as well, and for my own personal position and friends and family you're talking to, is this balance, which has been the sort of age-old question, really, in anyone who's on a spiritual journey, of how much is about working on ourselves and how much is about the attention outside of us. So, putting it into context, in my humble opinion, as a human race, we have been quite poor stewards of this planet. Now, I am not talking about global warming and carbon dioxide levels. I'm talking about this consumerism society and people not stepping up in their communities to be leaders or good community members. So I've got a 93-year-old neighbour who's recently broken her shoulder, and this woman is incredible. I mean, talk about resilience and positive attitude, not in a false positivity, just wouldn't think to complain about things, naturally grateful. She was born in London, and was a teenager in the Second World War. And I was talking to her, Amrit, about, were you traumatized by that? And she said, because we hear so much, obviously, about trauma stories. And she said, well, no, yes, I was a young teenager, but you took it in your stride then and you got on with it. And, so you did what your parents said, and that was as much thought as you gave it, really. And so with this question, with what's going on now, there's so much tension, and it's so tempting to be talking about who your leader is, what global agendas are, etc. How much do you think that's a relevant discussion, and how much do you think is a distraction from us working on ourselves as individuals?
Yeah, so it's a really fun conversation despite all the tension and challenges baked into it, because the key body of work I'd lean into to answer that question is integral theory. I'm not sure if you've come across Ken Wilber's work, but he talks about the different levels at which human beings have evolved, and he's got colors that pair with them. And I don't know one for one the references to the colors, so pardon me for that. But nonetheless, he talks about how at large we're moving through this phase. We had him on the podcast recently, how there is a trap at each level of evolution of consciousness and awareness. And the particular trap for where we are right now is like we've just moved through a phase where individuation was super necessary for consciousness to see itself reflected back, right? And we've gotten to this point now where we're evolving. Now, the trap in the next phase that we've sort of got to overcome is holding space simultaneously for individuation and oneness. And then there's a couple of layers above, and then we'll end up in oneness, right? But we're collectively moving through this shift. And this is the conundrum that we're in, right? It's like we're so individuated and our separation seems so stark. But even you hear people say this, it's a two-party system, but both parties are the same. And it's like, so we're kind of getting to the awareness that like it's one, but it's not kind of like the oneness that we're seeking, right? But nonetheless, there is this awareness of like, these are just arrays and, slivers of, fractals or like, yeah, light reflecting out of the same prism, if you will. But there is that, there is this awareness that things are shifting. So I think that Ken Wilber work is really important because it puts together a bit of a ladder of a framework, and it points to the pitfall, which is what's happening right now. Is like, yes, we're recognizing our individuality to have more sight and more surface area to peer into the oneness, but don't let that confuse you. You've got more surface area to see your individuations amongst each other, to recognize how one we really are. That's the next step. Don't get stuck in the weeds. I can't help but visualize grass right now and sky. We are growing towards the sky, but as the grass grows taller and taller, it is evolving. But you start to see more and more surface area appearing. But it will go through this alchemical process of shifting and transmuting into. We've come a very long way, and the part to take heart in, I guess, is when you look at how far things have come in just the last 100 years. Like, I interviewed a lady on the podcast who was 93 and she passed away recently, Dr. Gladys, but she coined the term holistic, incredible medicine woman, doctor, just phenomenal. And she lived through the Second World War. And I was talking to her and she was just in awe of, we were doing a podcast. She was just in awe of the fact that she was talking to someone on a screen over she'd done a lot of podcasts, but nonetheless, she couldn't stop remarking about the fact that she remembered the first time Morse could be exchanged.
Yes.
And it's like, you think about communication, you think about consciousness, you think about how much is shifting. And that's also where, I guess, this is Amrit's perspective, doesn't have to be yours. I think the rate at which things are accelerating is intense. And I do think that adds to the intensity that we're experiencing. But I do think therein lies the greater opportunity to break through. We're back to that breakdown to break through. I can't help but being a life coach. I just see it again and again and again, that people are consistently breaking down to break through. So yes, I do think we see more separation right now than ever before. But I do think it's a necessary precursor for us to hop through to realize that we're not as separate as we really think we are. And I think the newer generations are cluing into more and more of this. Like, the idea of war sounds less interesting. The idea of, even going to work to trade their time sounds less interesting to them. They're like the disengaged as a generation, they're calling them. But I think they're just more clued into what's really important. It's like, why would I spend all my day deteriorating my health, grinding away to come back home to then pay for a gym membership and look after myself and all this sort of stuff, when the key reason I don't have health is because I'm not, so they're asking really intelligent questions. The challenge, I think, for the older generations looking down is they see them coming up with very basic answers.
Yeah.
But because the answers are basic doesn't mean they're wrong. It's very interesting. The only other piece I'll sort of tack on to all of that is, you pointed to the very powerful word in there, which is consumerism in your question, and I think therein lies, there's that famous quote, which is, capitalism, uh, uh, it's just the best of the worst models. Like it's just the best we've got to run what we can. But, at the heart of capitalism, there's no avoiding it. The engine is consumerism. Yeah. And so you're taught to consume. Now, the challenge, back to your initial question, is who buys better? Someone that loves themselves and is whole and doesn't need anything, or someone that's consistently been programmed that they're not enough. And so, hence, ergo marketing, right? Consistently telling them that they're not enough, they're inadequate. Are they more likely to consume? So, fear sells. They say sex sells. Fear, touch wood, sells. Yeah. Love is enough in and of itself. And so you rub the heart of it all, which is like, well, if we're going to build a society, and this is how everyone's going to get along, and there's going to be that exchange of capitalistic, in a capitalistic society of goods, consumerism is at the heart of the engine that drives GDP and economic growth, then yeah, you're going to want people to be off their center, wanting to consume, living in fear that what they've got is not enough, or there's not enough tomorrow, there's a rainy day. And Stephen Kotler spoke about this on the podcast. So he reckons 25%, 20 to 25% of our awareness is just baked in with baseline anxiety now in the 21st century. And I think as I say that, most people will relate. It's like everything has that bit more of a frantic energy. Yeah. So I think you've touched on something really profound there in the consumerism piece. I do think we intentionally get hijacked now, like not from a conspiracy point of view, but it's just dollars and cents point of view. It just, if it makes sense financially for people to, make you feel like you're inadequate, then, they're going to make money off of that, and that's going to drive their bottom line. And we're building this machine and this beast, that is the capitalistic corporation organizational structure. I'm not demonizing it. I think it's the best we've got thus far, but that, I believe, also is breaking down to break through. We stand on the shoulders of everyone that's come before us, even all the models and thoughts and ideas that have come before us. So, but some of these are starting to show that they're ripe and they're past their use by date. And it's an inspiring time, if you can feel into it, to sort of say, oh yeah, something new is going to come. Something inspiring is happening. What is it?
Oh, I love it. When you were talking there, it really reminded me of the analogy of the fox eating the chickens. And I spend most of my time, whenever I'm not in front of a screen, out in nature looking after animals. And nature only goes wrong when something has interfered with their environment. So the only reason foxes get a bad rat to come and kill, as if they're not going to eat all the chickens in the chicken coop, is because in nature all the chickens would never be together in an enclosed area like that without the ability to get away and see the predator coming. So we blame the fox instead of looking at what is the situation that's made nature go so out of balance and make the fox behave in a way that it would never do if it was left in its natural environment. And it really made me think, when you were thinking there, it was like the way so many humans live now. We talk now about the connection to nature, and it's so important and grounding. And like you were saying, the younger generations are questioning, why would I go out and do this lifestyle that you're telling me I should do to be a responsible citizen? And I was speaking to my vet last week, and he was saying they can't get young vets to do the shift work because they want a work-life balance. And sort of the older vets are saying, well, I've done my time. It's over to you now to do the night shifts and things. So it's bringing up all these challenges where we think the way we did it, and I'm generalizing here, look, that's the way it's been done, not having this curiosity, which is so important to both of us. The younger generations are coming in from a complete other angle and saying, no, I'm going to throw it all out. But actually, if we could sort of look back to, instead of this black and white thinking, look at all the 50 shades of grey and sort of have these discussions. Well, what are we missing here? What are we missing on an individual level with our lives that's causing us this stress and anxiety? And therefore, that could grow out to a collective level.
Yeah, I'll be broad brush in my response, which is probably unfair. There's a lot of nuance to the response. The response deserves a lot more nuance than what I'm going to give it. In my heart of hearts, though, one of the key elements, I'll be politically correct about it. One of the key elements, um, I believe, is the way the nuclear family is set up. I've got young kids right now, and it totally takes a village. And I'm looking around, and there's a community around, touch wood, but even the community is stretched. And I just feel like I'll try and draw the parallels adequately, but for me, the answer is elders. I feel like we've lost touch with our grandparents, right? Like I think we put them off in nursing homes, we siphon them off, we put them away, and they live over there. Like similar to you, my neighbor's, she's also in her 90s. She's actually, she's just been moved to a nursing home because she's suffering from some dementia. But we had some really amazing conversations in the time that we've lived next to each other. And just watching just how much wisdom is naturally in an older person, right? And taking the time for just to listen to them a little bit, to sort of be like, oh, this. Like one of the key things I always get when I speak to someone that's older than me is like, even just little things. Like I'll speak to I've got coaching clients, and this happened yesterday, and a coaching client of mine felt like he was failing. Now he's just started his coaching business. We've worked on it for 4 months. He's already got 5 clients. He's doing amazing. Yeah. Within 4 months of my coaching, but like it took me like a year, maybe 18 months to get my first 5 clients. Yeah. Like it took a long time. And I didn't know what I was doing. Naturally now, with having experienced everything, I can guide him further, and he's doing amazing, touch wood. But for him, he has these amazing days and he has these really challenging days, and he's just like, I feel amazing. I feel, and the conversation was like, okay, there's this big thing driving for him, which is his ambition. Yeah. And there's like this real expectation that things are going to go really well. And it's like, absolutely, he recently bought a home, and he was like, look, it's not like he was in a circle of wealth, abundance, mastermind. And everyone's like, oh, but the ROI on that isn't that great. Like when you do rent it out, you're actually only going to make like 2% a year. And then I said, we paused and we were talking about this. I was like, is it really an issue that you're only making 2% a year? And he goes, well, I kind of tuned in with my intuition at the time, and it felt like the right buy. And I was like, mate, you've bought a home that you want to live in, and now you're looking at it through a lens of rental ROI. It's got nothing to do with rental ROI. It's the place where your heart wants to live. Your nervous system wants to reside here. The ROI on the peace and equanimity that you got from being in an environment that you love to be in, even if it costs you 10 grand a year to live there, like live there, like let it run in the negative. And it's really interesting to watch, like, again, the forces of like expectation, ambition. But it was like, I've got to sort of not keep up with the Joneses, but just not fall behind. He's conscious. He just doesn't want to fall behind. And so watching this, just watching this dynamic of people wanting to strive for more, which is totally within their right. And I think we're only available to that because of, well, when I zoom out again, I think Maslow's hierarchy of needs is happening to us collectively. Future generations have played a lot of a massive part, like to sort of build out safe baseline safety. Now food and stuff is covered. So now we're moving closer and closer to self-actualization as a collective. Yeah. So the younger generation's like, well, food and safety is actually abundant. Money is just a concept, and I'm sure there's abundance of it out there, and it'll come into me. Yeah, it's energy. Like it'll generate, it'll come. So I can spend the time to sort of be with myself, reflect on myself, learn more about myself. And so I think that evolution is naturally happening for them. But back to the point, I think every time I speak to an elder, this is what I was saying to my coaching client, is how many people, and I had to speak to him this way. I was like, most billion-dollar exits, what age do they happen at? And I got this from Scott Galloway. And he goes, oh, I don't know, maybe in their 40s. And I was like, no. And we played the guessing game a little while. It's in the 60s, right? You're generally about 64 when you do $1 billion exit, if you're going to do $1 billion exit out of a business. The next question is, when did you start that business? My client's 36, yeah? So when did they start that business? And he was like, oh, probably in their late 20s. No. 30s. No. 40s. No. They were 55. They were 55 when they started the company. that was going to give them $1 billion exit, right? And then they exited at 64. That's 9 years. Now, what you don't see is that's the tip of the iceberg, right? Like all the years they put into becoming the individual, all that wisdom, all the lessons, all the mentoring, all the guidance, all the things. And yet on social media and stuff like this, you'll see people that are extremely successful, and that's what you're buying again. And your fear is once again encouraging you to consume that you're getting left behind. And it's like, no. And the conversation we ended up having and we left the call was, he was super ecstatic. He's like, I said to him, like, whether your house makes a loss or a profit doesn't matter. It's very likely now that you've entered the market, you're probably going to be someone that invests in real estate over shares. You're making good money. You're likely, 10 years from now, have a couple more properties. You will have learnt lessons from investing in this property. You as an individual is growing. You're going to make smarter choices in the future. This is not a dumb choice. This was your first stepping stone. To expect it to be an overnight success, my first podcast didn't reach 1 million views. That didn't happen. I'm 8 years in. Yeah. And success starts to emerge. Yeah. So just to sort of temper that. And that's where I think elders and wisdom of the elders is like, hey, like, it's a long road, buddy. Like, I know you wanted everything yesterday and times are accelerating and it feels like everything's a super rush. But at the same time, like, take a beat. What's coming for you will always come to you. There's that age-old saying, and what's not meant to be yours will always miss you as well. So just relax. Like, it's all kind of getting to where it needs to get to. But for me, I know it's a very nuanced question that you ask, but for me, that relationship with our elders and the wisdom that they encourage us to slow down and to integrate, at the moment, I feel like we've almost got two generations, like a younger generation and a middle generation, sort of looking at each other kind of going, what? But if there was an elder generation sandwiched on top that we hadn't shipped off to nursing homes, they'd be like, oh yeah, I remember when I felt like that about you. And these people in the middle would calm down a little bit and be like, oh yeah, this is how they felt. So we're probably just feeling what they felt about us, and evolution is a normal process, and everybody would just relax a little bit towards each other.
I think it's so true. And it's so interesting you said that, because over the last month, this relationship to the elders has been coming up everywhere from all different angles about
Really?
just how important it is and the wisdom that they carry. And when you think about it, most people that are lucky enough to have a grandparent around, often the grandparent will get on better with the grandchildren than they did with their own children. And that's a well-known fact. And there's a reason for that, because you're not buffering heads so much. You're not in so much sort of competition, so near to each other and both going through similar stages. And I think there's so much to learn from our community structures, and that has to start with the family structure. And we've seen a massive breakdown in the family structure. And when you were talking about the different stages, I can't remember your guest name of where we are as humanity. It reminded
Ken
me.
Wilber.
Oh, brilliant. Because, we're almost at the toddler stage. A toddler gets to a stage where they look in the mirror and they realize that's them. And they realize the separation. And yet we embrace it at the toddler stage, but we don't embrace it at a wider stage.
And I think something worth mentioning is one of my favorite authors of all time is a gentleman named Stephen Jenkinson. I've had him on the podcast a couple of times, touchwood. Feel very blessed to have been able to speak to him. He's a very interesting man. He sits with people by their bedside as they pass and transition. It's, there's a lot of light in his work, but from the outside looking in, it seems quite dark, But one of the things he said in one of his episodes was, we talked about eldership a lot. The episode was dedicated to eldership. The other one was dedicated to dying wise. It's the name of his book, and incredible book. But when he talks about eldership, he said, look, not everyone will become older, but not everyone will become an elder. Yeah. And I think everybody has some element of eldership within them for sure, and I don't think you have to be older to be an elder as well. I think there are some young people that are really stepping into what you alluded to before, this custodianship, this stewarding. But when I asked him, okay, how do you diagnose? How do you discern? What are the symptoms of an older person becoming an elder? And he said, look, it's actually very simple. They need to be able to answer a 2-question test. And the first question is, what did you know? And so that's quite an open question, and it's quite profound, because you can get any sort of response to that, right? Like, what did you know? There's a a lot of can of worms already opening up in that. Like, did you keep your head buried about something? Did you ignore something? But what did you know? Right? And he said the second question is critical. It goes along the lines of, what did you do about it?
Mm.
And he said, if you can get an adequate response to both of those that resonates with you, then that person is an elder to you, right? And I love that because it doesn't alienate anybody from becoming an elder. It's just you discerning who your elders are. What did they know and what did they do about it? Does that speak to your soul? Does that inspire your revolution, right? Then you know you're speaking to an elder for you, yeah? And I think incumbent upon all of us then is this essence of responsibility. Yeah, it's like, what do we know and what are we doing about it? And like a lot of what we discussed today in today's podcast thus far has been, yeah, there's a lot going on. What do we know about it? And what are we doing about it? You know, is actually the big question.
It's a really big question, and it's the most important question, I would say, for everyone at the moment, because to me, this is just linking into shame and how people, when they carry this and it can be buried quite deep within them, it makes the natural reaction is almost to project your attention outside of yourself. And if you're carrying that within yourself, you're going to be very critical of the other people that you're viewing in your lens. And when I step back and look objectively about what I see going on in the world, and of course I'm including myself always in all this, is I wonder how much what you've just touched on there about what did you know and what did you do about it is at the heart of so much of the projection that we're seeing at the moment, going external outside of ourselves, and the judgment that we put on so many other people that are stepping up to take these leadership positions, because quite frankly, I wouldn't fancy it. You're on a hiding to nothing often when you put yourself out there. And also a certain personality type that has to be strong enough to make those really difficult decisions. So how do you think that relates to that, particularly that second question? Well, what did you do about it? That links into what people who are watching today, if they're feeling overwhelmed by what's going on in their outer world, how they can reflect on that and work through that themselves.
Yeah, it's a really deep question, and it circles back to part of a question that didn't get answered before. So thank you for circling back in some way as well, is how much of us doing our individual work impacts the collective.
Mm.
Yeah. And I've actually been on a full spectrum with this question. It's sometimes it's like, dude, doing your own work is not enough. Wake up the activists, get out there. There's things to be done. Like there is stuff happening to the planet right now. And I've gone through like multiple, like actually me sitting here to meditate for the next hour is absolutely the most important thing. Now, I believe there probably is a happy medium somewhere between the two. And I think different things are true at different moments in time, For me at the moment where I'm at with this question is absolutely you taking the time to sit at home and deregulate your to regulate your nervous system, to de-stress, discharge your nervous system, I believe does volumes for the rest of the world.
Mm.
I'm in a very metaphysical kind of awareness now based on where all the podcast guests have been. And I see the butterfly ripple effect in just about everything. Maybe it's a little bit cuckoo and woo-woo, but I can't. It's just, that's where my echo chamber is reflecting back to me at the moment. You got to remember my background is that of an engineer. So, I'm always going to be somewhat grounded through all of this. But particularly a conversation I had with Michael Bernard Beckwith, founder of Agape Institute recently, he said, look, you sitting in a room doing your meditation for an hour, allowing yourself to feel different is 100% making a difference. Yeah, like you offload, you declutter your mind, you drive past someone in traffic, you don't flip them off, you're not angry at them, you hold the door open for someone at the shopping mall, you help the elderly lady across the street, you take a moment to have a kind exchange at the coffee shop, you go to work today, you actually ask about someone how their day was and you actually listen. Like I'm only at 10 o'clock now. Like there's so much more yet to go throughout your day. You taking a moment and a beat to just look after yourself, despite the demands of everything else, is admittedly one of the best things you can do. Yeah. Now, I will be the first to acknowledge, as I'm sharing this, I could definitely be better with my own self care. Yeah. I've got 2 young kids. Yeah. I've got a podcast that's growing, coaching business. A lot is going on, touch wood, in my world. Yeah. But at the same time, the awareness of how important it is to cultivate, just even if it's a little bit of space for yourself. Yeah. And it doesn't always have to look like sitting and meditating, going for a walk. Yeah. For some people, like I did my mental health first aid responders work level 1 and level 2. Netflix is an amazing tool for some people's mental health support. They're not going to meditate, they're not going to journal, but they need a moment to just feel connection to something. And they've got a show that helps them through the things. Am I advocating we need to watch more Netflix? No, for the majority. But if you're in a really dark place, the point is it doesn't have to be something interstellar. Like you don't have to go away on a retreat. You don't have to, go to the Peruvian jungles to sit. Like there's an opportunity for you to meet yourself every day. Now, I'm slowly becoming a believer in the more small things you can tack in on top of each other more frequently. Currently, where I'm at is I feel like those are, given the nature of how society is at large right now, those have more of an impact. I've just noticed in my own coaching clients. I can send them away on a 2-week holiday. They'll come back completely recharged. But then, within about 6 to 8 weeks, they're back to where they were. And they're like, just feeling all burnt out again. And it's like, great. So what are some of the tools? And, one of my clients, he's, Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year, like incredible individual. Yeah. Touch wood, managing billions of dollars worth of assets, like really amazing guy. And we speak to him. He's super busy. And for him, it's simply when you wake up in the morning, count backwards from 100 all the way down to 0. And generally, what you get stuck and you start again from the last number you remember, count all the way back down. Because generally, what's happening is when you wake up in the morning, you're in the delta wave state, right? So in the day-to-day waking state, we're in beta, like that's just our doing things. When we're in meditation, we go into alpha. But then in hypnosis and places like this, you're going into the delta wave state. Now, the delta wave state has been studied for manifestation, practices like this. It's really incredible, like self-healing, autonomous healing and stuff like this. Autonomous healing, sorry. And so you wake up in delta, but your mind generally starts to kick into like alpha and then crunches into beta, and then you start to go about your day. The invitation being, hey, he found it too hard to meditate. And it's like, let's just count backwards from 100. Yeah, go backwards. 100, 99, 98, 97, 96. What you're doing is giving your mind something to focus on so you can remain in a state. Yeah. And by the time you get down to 0, it's profound. I didn't have to coach him on anything. He's naturally trying to go, like his mind is scanning his body. He's healing things. He's going through, he's like manifesting, like he's visualizing his future. He's naturally going into gratitude practices. He's naturally going into forgiveness practices. He's naturally going into like visualizing himself one with the earth. Like this is quite a like straight and narrow mainstream, not your typical like not seeking spirituality kind of person. And he's already unlocking these experiences because your delta wave state's naturally there. Now, for him, that takes a grand total of less than 5 minutes, and he can do it every single day. And then before he swings his legs out of his bed and hits his feet on the floor, something I do every day, touch wood, is just give thanks for 3 things. Just give thanks. Start your day with gratitude. Yeah. If you can finish your day with gratitude too, write it down in a journal, epic. But you know what I mean? Like you've spent 5 minutes and you do this daily. I feel like that shifts the cup of your consciousness more. Yeah. More and more and more and more. And I'm noticing at the moment in particular, this is not to sort of say retreats don't work. They absolutely do. I've had some of the most profound shifts on retreats. We run retreats, but also the integration from retreats is so important when you come back that, you've got to still show up and do the work. So you might as well start up, do the work in between as well. Those moments, your life is happening to you now. So long-winded answer to give you a few examples of how it can look, but then also practically it's unique to the individual. Just do something you enjoy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, not hedonistic. Do something you enjoy, like your body enjoys, your soul enjoys. Maybe you're meant to go get a massage once a week. Yeah, maybe you're meant to just, allow all that oxytocin from, literally having someone be that present, that attentive to you, flood your body, and you don't walk around with hunched shoulders as much. You're not as grizzly and grumpy anymore. Like the list is endless. Take a walk with your neighbor's dog. anything is available to you if you bring the right intention to it.
Hi everyone. I just wanted to take a quick break in this fantastic episode to ask you this. Are you as fed up as I am with all the stress triggers that we're constantly bombarded with every day? From geoengineering, EMFs, fake and toxin-filled food, unstable political leaders that no one trusts have our best interest at heart, global agendas, financial struggles, the list feels endless, doesn't it? But here's the thing, there are solutions. Whatever challenges the so-called powers that be throw at us, nature, and we as real humans, always have the ability to rise above it and find the answers. I've seen it time and time again, not just in my own life, and trust me, I'm a natural worrier, but also with the many clients I've worked with over the years, both human and animal. That's why I've created something that I'm incredibly excited to share with you, my Mastering Stress and Resetting Your Nervous System online course. This is where I've pulled together all my best tools, techniques and strategies, everything that's made a huge difference for me personally and my clients. And the best part is you get lifelong access so you can revisit whenever you need. You can ask questions as you go through the course. There's an 80-page comprehensive ebook, over 4 hours of videos and audios, discounts on products and consults, and free access to bonus modules with expert guests. And to top it all, you can get the free Teachable app for on-the-go learning so you can incorporate all of this into your already busy routine. The time is right now to take back control of your health, your stress levels, and your life. So let's do this together. Click on the link below this video, join our incredible community, and no matter whatever the world throws to us, we'll thrive. Because the truth is, we are all stronger than we think we are. And when we combine the power of nature with our determination, we're simply unstoppable. So let's make this happen together. The link to join is below. And now back to the podcast. I love the way synchronicity works. So we were meant to connect last week and we didn't. And you've just given that beautiful explanation, which to me, in all the years I've been going through this journey, I've arrived at exactly the same place. It's those little things. And today is the launch of my online Mastering Your Stress and Resetting Your Nervous System that covers all of this stuff. So synchronicities, they happen. I was just like, wow, I can't believe that you're saying all this, because these things happen really, really make a difference. And again, we can see it plays out in the rest of the animal kingdom. The squirrels don't go and connect nuts once a year. They're collecting them all through the autumn to store up the things. And I'm very conscious of our time. And I think you are an expert, Amrit, about staying curious and following your passion. And anyone who hasn't subscribed to your podcast yet, it's an absolute must. Your guests are phenomenal. I love it. So I'd love to finish off just by, on that note, with your curiosity and things. You've covered a couple of them, but where you are now, where we are as a collective looking out at so many people struggling, what are one or two of your wow moments that you've learned from some of your guests and some of your interactions that you'd like to share that could be helpful for people?
Yeah, definitely that recent moment with thank you. It's very humbling to get your reflection back. But you've got an awesome podcast yourself. So very, very flattered to receive that from you. The recent conversation with Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith was profound. Not least of all for that reminder that actually us doing our own work is not selfish. It's actually, if you bring all your intentionality to it, this is how the world's going to change. Yeah. And the more I speak to spiritual masters, it sort of seems to be that all the conflict in the world outside sort of exists within us somewhere, touch wood, and we've got to go to work on it inside. And I'll just to sort of paint a picture, because this is like mysticism 101, if you will, yeah? Because mysticism begins with, okay, the world is happening, correct? And you're like, sure, yep. And they're like, where? And you're like, out there. And they're like, how do you know? And they're like, because I see it out there. I feel it out there. I hear it out there. Like, those are your senses. Yes. Where are they computing everything? In my head. So where's it all happening? Oh, in my head. Oh, whoa. Right. And therein lies, it starts to become super slippery. And this is where mysticism starts to take hold. And then you open up to the dynamic nature of as within, so without, and it all starts to unravel, right? Which is a beautiful, beautiful place to sort of come to. But that was super profound of Michael Bernard Beckwith. It does seem, the more people I speak to, a couple of things are happening, and I'll summarize a few things that are in my awareness now, given the nature of your question. It does seem 2024, 2025 are a quickening. This is just consistently what I've heard across a few. I'm not an expert in, these matters, like metaphysically, what's actually happening collectively across the years astrologically. That is, astrology is not my forte, but it does seem to be consistently people are communicating that there is a quickening that's happening, which is why we're seeing all the things that we're seeing that are like intense in their nature in terms of the things breaking down. People are quite inspired to some degree because they had visualized things happening in about 15 years and things are happening in about 5.
Yes.
So things are accelerating, and it's called the quickening. And the hope and ambition, and they're quite confident, is that we're quickening into this awakening that we're collectively going through, and we're just about to pop through. We're about to take into escape velocity. I'm hearing it a lot, so I just felt compelled to share that because you asked. So it is a quickening. It is intense. I'm noticing everybody is going through something right now. So if you are, please don't feel alone. Like, as a coach, this is one of the cool advantages I get. Like, I'm working with various different people and watching like everyone's kind of popping off at the same time. And I was like, oh, it must be astrological, because it's like everybody's going, like, you've got their work cut out for them at the moment, it seems. But it's an opportunity to show up and discover the new you that's going to make your way through it. The other really big piece that seems to be happening, and I'm not sure if this is just where I'm at in my journey and everybody around me, or if we're collectively going through this, but it also seems to be that right now, there are many paths to awakening always, but it seems to be a very consistent thread inviting people into their heart.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds super nebulous to a lot of people. Yeah. But for those of you that are parents, take a moment to think about when you see your kid first time in the morning or later, like, or you see them kick a goal, or you see them do something. And there's a moment where you respond, but it's not a mental response. Yeah, you've got a heart-based response, or you might have a pet, or it might be when you see a loved one, or it might be when you see the ocean. But we all kind of know when we have a heart-based response, especially the kind of people listening into your podcast here. So, Touchwood, I think there's a real opportunity at the moment of all times to really activate into your heart space. Some of the, I don't want to say cooler, some of the things that provoke my curiosity further along on this path through the guests that we've had include people that actually energetically help you build heart structure, like they look at it as literal energetic architecture for you to be able to house and home your heart with. We're looking at Dr. Robert J. Gilbert, like Dr. Christina Lopez, some really interesting people out there that are, and the message seems to be consistently, come on back to your heart. Like, now's the opportunity. Now, I do wonder if it's coming out of the head into the heart, or whether collectively we're doing that Maslow's hierarchy, integral theory, evolution thing, and people are coming out of that. Because the solar plexus chakra is very power dominated, right? And it's got that sun energy. But, even with that sun energy, and this is not to sort of negate it, I think it's a beautiful thing that's got us this far. But I wonder if we're all coming into that green energy of the heart a little bit. This is what I feel, whether it's time to mature all that energy that's collected in the solar plexus, and everyone being all power, dominance, masculine, and the heart frequency is feminine, and a bit of that balm is starting to come through, and we're sort of making our way through that shift. So whether we're coming to the heart from above, the mind, or, the chakra system from below, Touchwood, I think there's a real opportunity right now for us to connect to our heart. And that goes back to what we said, I'm not sure if Netflix brings out your heart, but if you're watching comedy, yeah, probably. Like, you're having a laugh, So there's something in there for you to just connect to what really you enjoy and brings you alive. Because you also answered the question, ask the question with the word purpose in there. And one of my deepest fascinations, we've talked about this in terms of, how curiosity is sacred, and then it leads into, if you can cultivate curiosity, it leads to your passion. And if you can cultivate your passion for yourself, eventually you'll be over dripping with it, and then you serve others with it, and that's your purpose, right? I'm pretty sure we talked about that last time. Now, in there, like, what you quickly notice is your curiosity, like this whole formula, like it's all about purpose and like cultivating something that is enriching the mind. But on the backdrop of that is this essence of vitality, because what we're talking about in that curiosity and, passion and purpose, we're talking about your dharma, right? But then you've got this whole philosophy of Ayurveda, which supports your dharma, like the whole science of Ayurveda, which is a system of health, yes, sister science to yoga, is designed so that you are here for a reason. You can live your life to its fullest expression. So health is here to help you live your purpose. So health and purpose are intrinsically involved. Yeah. And so they're one and the same almost if you start getting into the philosophies, right? So with that in your awareness, like the key word that I just want to bring into everybody's awareness is the word vitality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like vitality is a very, very, very profound word. Now I'm going to get dark for just a sec, but if you're not living your purpose, nature's giving you a bunch of cells and a bunch of carbon formation stuff, juice, life force, all animated, and you're not using it for the way that the universe wants to see itself witnessed through the conduit that is you, looking in, consciousness folding in on itself, what the actual mystery going on, yeah, that it's more inclined to say, okay, you're not honoring the sacred gifts. It loves everybody, but you can sort of see in a hypothetical situation, be like, okay, I'll take those cells back, please, and use them for something else that will honor the sacred gift that is life, right? Because at the moment, you're not playing your vital role in it all. And hence, how vital are you sticking to what it is that your vital role, your vital contribution? None of us are here by mistake. Every single person has a place in the grand scheme. No two of us are the same. Our fingerprints are different. We've got 10 fingers. Not one of them matches. We're all unique. We've all got a place in the grand scheme of it all. We're all currently off being like encouraged off center to consume. Yes, we talked about that earlier, but come back to your sacred self, find things that enjoy you, you're naturally curious about, and embrace the joy, embrace the vitality. The vitality is key, right? It reminds you of who you really are. Yeah. And if you can't find it, find the joy, find the simple things. This is where we was like, you're watching comedy on Netflix. I'm not judging you. Go have a great time. If you're going for a walk with a neighbor's dog, have a great time. Spending 30 minutes in the gym, hanging out with your friends, having a coffee. Do those little things that cultivate those butterfly moments that ripple into your consciousness, that make you more alive, more joyous, more full, more happier. And then, the interactions will all flow from there.
Absolutely beautiful. Fantastic. Such wise words. Thank you so much. Now, all your links will be below about people that can work with you on a personal basis. I really encourage people to check it out because you've got an amazing resource base there. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you so much for sharing so openly. I really appreciate you, and I know my listeners will too.
It is always such an honor and a pleasure to come here, Catherine. Your questions always humble me in the depths of, just how deep you like to go and explore these really profound topics that impact us all in such deep, rich ways. And I think people will acknowledge that, you reflected a lot of curiosity back at me, but also, it's a mirror of you. And I think, there's just so much goodness in your podcast. And I just feel really honored to be one of your guests. Thank you so much for having me on again. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. And if you feel inspired, please do share with your friends and family. This helps us spread the word and also helps me encourage some exciting new guests to take part in this podcast. And above all, stay curious and stay free.